The missing hospital bracelet should have been my first clue that my wife was trying to kill me. Not literally, of course. Marta's too smart for anything that messy. She prefers the slow burn, the psychological demolition, the kind of destruction that leaves you wondering if you're losing your mind, or if everyone around you has collectively decided to gaslight you into oblivion. My name is Nick Brandt, and 3 days ago I woke up in Minneapolis General with a concussion, a dislocated shoulder, and the distinct feeling that someone had been rearranging my life while I was unconscious. The car accident wasn't my fault. Some teenager ran a red light and T-boned my Honda. But apparently, while I was getting my brain rattled like dice in a cup, my loving wife of 15 years had been busy playing house with someone else. "Where's my hospital bracelet?" I asked Marta when she finally showed up to drive me home. She was checking her phone, her manicured nails clicking against the screen like tiny hammers. "What bracelet?" She didn't look up. "The plastic one they put on your wrist when you're admitted. It had my medical information, allergies, all that stuff." "How should I know?" "You probably lost it. Still scrolling. Still not looking at me." Now, I've been married long enough to know when my wife is lying. Marta has tells. She touches her left earring when she's being dishonest, and she'd been practically molesting that pearl stud since she walked into my room. But this felt different. This felt calculated. "The nurse said you signed for my personal effects," I pressed. "Everything goes in a bag. The bracelet would have been in there." "Nick, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it fell off in the ambulance. Can we go? I have a meeting at 4. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. My wife, who once drove me to 3 different pharmacies at midnight when I had food poisoning, couldn't be bothered to spend 10 minutes discussing my hospital stay. She had a meeting. Of course she did. The ride home was silent except for the sound of her texting. Every red light was an opportunity for her to fire off another message. Her fingers flying across the keyboard with the urgency of someone coordinating a military operation. Or covering up a crime. Our house looked the same from the outside. Same brown shutters, same overgrown hedge that I'd been meaning to trim for 6 months. But something felt off the moment I walked through the front door. It was too clean. Marta's not a slob, but she's not exactly Martha Stewart either. Yet everything was spotless, arranged, like someone had been expecting an inspection. "Did you have the cleaning lady come while I was gone?" I asked. "No, why?" "It just looks different." She shrugged and disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the coffee maker gurgling to life, the sound of cabinets opening and closing. Normal sounds. Domestic sounds. But they felt wrong, like someone was performing the role of a wife rather than actually being one. I went upstairs to shower and change. The bathroom had been scrubbed clean. No trace of my blood from where I'd hit my head before the paramedics arrived. Even the grout between the tiles looked freshly bleached. In the bedroom, my clothes had been washed and folded with military precision. My prescription bottles were lined up on the nightstand like little soldiers. Except they were the wrong bottles. I take 3 medications regularly: blood pressure, cholesterol, and a mild antidepressant that keeps me from wanting to strangle people during rush hour traffic. The bottles on the nightstand contained the right pills, but the labels were different, newer, like someone had transferred the contents to fresh containers. "Marta," I called downstairs. "Did you pick up my prescriptions while I was in the hospital?" "What?" Her voice was muffled, distant. My pill bottles looked different. "The pharmacy probably gave you new ones." "They do that sometimes. Except I hadn't been to the pharmacy. I'd been unconscious in a hospital bed, dreaming about flying cars and talking to my dead father about the proper way to grill a steak. Someone else had been handling my medications. Someone else had been making decisions about my care. Someone else had been living my life. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to piece together the timeline. The accident happened on Tuesday morning. I spent 2 nights in the hospital and came home Thursday afternoon. 48 hours. Not a long time in the grand scheme of things, but apparently long enough for my entire world to shift on its axis. My phone buzzed with a text from my buddy Jason, who works security at the hospital. "How you feeling, man? Saw your wife leaving the other night with some guy. Figured it was your brother or something." I don't have a brother. I stared at the message for a long time, reading it over and over until the words started to blur together. Marta had been at the hospital with another man. While I was lying in a bed with a head injury, my wife was playing tour guide for some mystery guest. The smart thing would have been to confront her directly, ask her who the guy was, demand an explanation, have the kind of grown-up conversation that marriage counselors are always pushing. But 15 years of marriage had taught me that Marta was a master at deflection. She could turn any accusation into an attack on my character, any question into evidence of my paranoia or jealousy. So instead, I decided to do what any reasonable person would do in my situation. I set up a spy camera in my own bedroom. The device was smaller than a pack of gum, ordered online and delivered to my office the next day. Jason had recommended it. Apparently, hospital security uses similar equipment to catch people stealing from patient rooms. It was motion-activated, night vision capable, and could stream footage directly to my phone. I installed it on Friday afternoon while Marta was at work, hiding it behind a picture frame on the dresser. The angle was perfect. It captured the entire bed and most of the room. If my wife was entertaining guests in our bedroom, I'd have front row seats to the show. That night, Marta came home late with a story about working on a big presentation. She seemed nervous, distracted, kept checking her phone during dinner. When we went to bed, she positioned herself as far from me as possible, claiming she didn't want to aggravate my injuries. "I'm fine," I told her. "The doctor said I'm healing well." Still, better to be safe. She rolled over, facing away from me. "Good night." I lay awake for hours, listening to her breathe, watching the red recording light blink in the darkness. Whatever was happening, whatever secret she was keeping, I'd know soon enough. The next morning, Marta announced she was going shopping with her sister Vicky. They'd be gone most of the day, maybe catch a movie, definitely have dinner. "Don't wait up." "What about lunch?" I asked. "We could order from that Thai place you like." Rain check. Vicky's going through a rough patch with the divorce. She needs girl time. After she left, I checked the camera footage from the night before. Nothing unusual, just my wife sleeping on her side of the bed, occasionally rolling over or adjusting her pillow. But there was something in her movements, a restlessness that suggested she wasn't sleeping as peacefully as she appeared. I fast-forwarded through the hours, watching our bedroom in time-lapse like some twisted nature documentary. And then, at 3:17 a.m., something interesting happened. Marta got up, walked to my side of the bed, and stood there for nearly 5 minutes just watching me sleep. That's not normal behavior. That's the kind of thing people do when they're planning something, or feeling guilty about something they've already done. Saturday afternoon brought the kind of revelation that makes you question everything you thought you knew about your life. I was reviewing the camera footage from Friday night when I saw something that made my blood turn to ice water. At 11:47 p.m., while I was downstairs watching the news, Marta entered our bedroom with a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, well-dressed, probably in his early 40s with the kind of confident swagger that screams, "I drive a BMW and have strong opinions about wine." They weren't being particularly careful about noise, which told me they thought I was either asleep or too medicated to notice. But here's the thing that really got my attention. They weren't just having an affair. They were going through my stuff. The man, who I'd later learn was named Greg Stein, went straight to my nightstand and started examining my prescription bottles. He held each one up to the light, reading the labels, shaking them to gauge the contents. Meanwhile, Marta was rummaging through my dresser drawers like she was looking for something specific. "Are you sure he won't remember?" Greg's voice was clear on the recording, picked up by the camera's sensitive microphone. "He was pretty out of it at the hospital," Marta replied. "The concussion, the pain meds, the shock. I doubt he'll piece it together. And the bracelet? Destroyed. There's no way to prove what happened now." I had to replay that part 3 times before it sank in. They weren't just talking about hiding evidence. They were talking about creating it, or destroying it. The missing hospital bracelet wasn't an accident or oversight. It was deliberate sabotage. But sabotage of what? What was on that bracelet that was worth destroying? I kept watching as Greg pulled a small plastic bag from his pocket and began replacing some of my pills with identical-looking capsules. Not all of them. Just a few from each bottle, like he was being careful not to make the switch too obvious. Marta stood guard by the door, occasionally glancing toward the hallway to make sure I wasn't coming upstairs. "How long before these take effect?" she asked. "Depends on his metabolism, but probably within a few days. The beauty is that they look exactly like his regular medication. Even if he gets suspicious and has them tested, it'll just look like a pharmacy mix-up. And then we wait. The symptoms will be subtle at first. Confusion, memory problems, maybe some paranoia. His doctor will probably adjust his antidepressant, maybe add something for anxiety. Before long, everyone will think he's having some kind of breakdown." I felt sick. Not just emotionally sick, but physically nauseated, like someone had punched me in the stomach and twisted my intestines into a pretzel. My wife, the woman I'd shared a bed with for 15 years, who knew my fears and dreams and the way I like my coffee, was systematically poisoning me. But why? What was the endgame here? I got my answer when Greg pulled Marta into his arms and kissed her with the kind of passion that made it clear this wasn't a new development. They'd been together for a while, long enough to be comfortable, to have inside jokes and shared references. "After the commitment hearing, we can move forward with everything else," he said, running his hands through her hair. "The house, the business, all of it." "I still feel bad about this," Marta whispered, but she didn't pull away from his embrace. "He's not a bad guy, just weak, depressed. This is probably better for him in the long run. He'll get the help he needs, and we can start our life together." Commitment hearing. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. The medication switch, the destroyed hospital bracelet, the careful documentation of my confusion and paranoia. It was all building toward a legal case that would strip me of my rights and give Marta control over everything I owned. I sat in my home office, staring at the computer screen, watching my wife and her lover plot my destruction with the casual efficiency of people planning a vacation. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, though that hurt like hell. It was the calculation. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of weakness. This was a long-term strategy, executed with precision and patience. They thought they were so smart. They thought they had covered all the angles, planned for every contingency. But they had made one crucial mistake. They underestimated me. I might be depressed, anxious, and recently concussed. But I'm not stupid. I'm an IT manager for a mid-sized company, which means I spend my days solving problems and thinking 3 steps ahead. I know how to research, how to document, how to build a case, and I know how to be patient. Over the next few hours, I copied all the camera footage to multiple backup drives, uploaded it to cloud storage, and created detailed timestamps for every significant moment. I researched Greg Stein online and discovered he was some kind of wellness entrepreneur who sold expensive supplements and life coaching services to wealthy divorcees. His social media was full of inspirational quotes and shirtless gym photos, the kind of performative masculinity that probably impressed women going through midlife crises. I also called Jason and asked him to pull the security footage from the hospital parking garage. If Marta and Greg had been there together, there would be video evidence. Jason was hesitant at first. Accessing hospital security footage without proper authorization could cost him his job. But when I explained what I suspected, he agreed to help. "Jesus, Nick," he said over the phone. "You really think your wife is trying to have you committed?" "I don't think it, Jason. I know it. I have them on video discussing the whole plan." "What are you going to do?" That was the million-dollar question. I could go to the police, but what would I tell them? That my wife was having an affair and switching my medications? Without proof that the pills were actually dangerous, it would just look like a domestic dispute. I could confront Marta directly, but that would only put her on guard and force her to accelerate whatever timeline she was working with. No, I needed to be smarter than that. I needed to let them think their plan was working while I built my own case. And then, when the time was right, I would destroy them both with the same methodical precision they had used against me. Sunday morning, Marta made breakfast and asked how I was feeling. I told her I'd been having some trouble sleeping, maybe some weird dreams. She nodded sympathetically and suggested I call my doctor. "Maybe your medications need adjusting," she said, touching my forehead like she was checking for fever. "Head injuries can affect how your body processes drugs." "You think so?" "I'm just worried about you, honey. You've seemed different since the accident. More anxious, more paranoid. Yesterday you were asking all those strange questions about your hospital bracelet. I let her see the doubt in my eyes, the confusion she was expecting. I guess I have been feeling a little off. Why don't you make an appointment with Dr. Morrison? He'll know what to do. Dr. Morrison was our family physician, a kind man in his 60s who had treated everything from my childhood asthma to Marta's occasional migraines. He trusted her, considered her a reliable source of information about my health and mental state. If she told him I was acting strangely, showing signs of paranoia or confusion, he'd take her seriously. It was a good plan, a smart plan. If I hadn't stumbled onto it by accident, it probably would have worked. But I had stumbled onto it, and now it was time to turn their own strategy against them. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to 3 different banks. At each one, I opened a new account using only my name, transferring funds from our joint accounts in small amounts that wouldn't trigger any automatic notifications. I wasn't trying to hide assets or commit fraud. Everything I moved was legally mine. But I wanted to make sure Marta couldn't freeze me out financially if things got ugly. Next, I visited a lawyer, not our family attorney. He'd represented both of us in real estate transactions and would have a conflict of interest, but a sharp young woman named Rebecca Chen who specialized in domestic cases. I brought copies of the video footage and a detailed timeline of events. "This is disturbing," she said after reviewing everything. "But building a legal case will take time. In the meantime, you need to protect yourself." How? First, stop taking any medication that your wife had access to. Get new prescriptions directly from your doctor and keep them somewhere secure. Second, document everything. Every conversation, every strange behavior, every inconsistency in her story. Third, consider installing additional security cameras around your house. If they're planning to escalate their timeline, you'll want evidence of whatever they do next. I followed her advice to the letter. That afternoon, I visited Dr. Morrison and explained that I was concerned about possible medication interactions following my accident. He agreed to prescribe fresh bottles of everything, and I had them filled at a pharmacy across town where Marta wouldn't think to look. The new security cameras were more sophisticated than my bedroom setup, professional-grade equipment that Jason helped me install while Marta was at work. We put them in the living room, kitchen, and home office, all hidden but positioned to capture clear audio and video of anyone entering those spaces. "You sure you want to go down this road?" Jason asked as we tested the final camera. "Once you start recording people without their knowledge, there's no going back." "They started this game," I replied. "I'm just playing by their rules now." That evening, Marta came home with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. She was in an unusually good mood, chatty and affectionate in a way that felt performative. During dinner, she asked about my day, whether I'd been feeling better, if I'd thought about calling Dr. Morrison. "Actually, I did call him," I said. "I made an appointment for Thursday." "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so glad you're taking this seriously." After dinner, she suggested we watch a movie together. We settled on the couch with the wine, and she curled up against me like she used to during the early years of our marriage. If I hadn't known what I knew, it would have felt romantic, intimate, like we were reconnecting after a rough patch. Instead, it felt like being embraced by a snake. Around 10 o'clock, she excused herself to take a shower. While the water was running, I checked the footage from the bedroom camera. Sure enough, at 11:30 p.m., Greg arrived through the back door. Apparently, he had a key and went straight upstairs. This time, I was ready for them. I had replaced my real medications with harmless vitamins that looked identical to the pills Greg had been switching. When he went through his routine of swapping out capsules, he was actually removing his own doctored medication and replacing it with placebos. Meanwhile, I was taking the real drugs, safely stored in a lockbox in my office. But the best part wasn't the medication switch. It was what happened next. "He seems more confused lately," Marta told Greg as they sat on my bed, discussing my mental state like I was a lab rat. "This morning he couldn't remember where he put his car keys. And yesterday he asked me the same question 3 times. The new dosage is working then." "How's his mood?" "More irritable. More suspicious. He keeps asking weird questions about things that don't matter." "Perfect. That'll play right into the narrative when we file the petition." I listened to them plan my destruction with the detached fascination of someone watching a nature documentary about predators. They had thought of everything: how to document my alleged decline, which doctors to consult, how to present their case to a judge. It was thorough, professional, and completely evil. But they had made one critical error. They assumed I was actually taking their doctored medication. Over the next few days, I played my part perfectly. I acted confused about small things, misplaced items in obvious places, repeated myself during conversations. I let Marta see me struggling with tasks that should have been simple, gave her plenty of ammunition for her concerned wife routine. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every moment of fake sympathy. The cameras captured it all, building an ironclad case that would destroy their credibility and expose their scheme. On Thursday, I kept my appointment with Dr. Morrison. Marta insisted on coming with me, playing the role of the devoted wife who was worried about her husband's declining mental health. "He's been having memory problems," she told the doctor while I sat there like a child being discussed by adults. "Confusion, irritability, paranoia. I'm worried it might be related to his head injury." Doctor Morrison examined me thoroughly, asked about my symptoms, and reviewed my medications. Everything appeared normal. My blood pressure was stable, my reflexes were good, and my cognitive function seemed fine. "I don't see any obvious signs of neurological damage," he concluded. "But head injuries can be tricky. Sometimes the effects don't show up immediately." "What should we do?" Marta asked, her voice perfectly pitched between concern and desperation. "Let's monitor the situation for another week or two. If his symptoms worsen, we might want to consider a neurological evaluation." It was exactly what they wanted to hear. Medical validation for their concerns. Professional documentation of my alleged decline. As we left the office, I could see the satisfaction in Marta's eyes. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Except it wasn't. Because while they were building their case against me, I was building a much stronger case against them. That night, Greg came over again. This time, they discussed timeline specifics, when to file the competency petition, which judge would be most sympathetic to their case, how to handle the financial aspects of having me declared incompetent. "The beauty of this approach," Greg explained, "is that it's all legal. We're not stealing anything or forging documents. We're just concerned family members trying to get help for someone who's clearly struggling. And afterward, you'll have power of attorney over all his assets. The house, the business accounts, the retirement funds, everything becomes yours to manage. And since I'll be your husband by then." They were planning to get married. Not just an affair, not just a financial scam, but a complete replacement of my entire life. Greg would move into my house, sleep in my bed, spend my money, and probably tell people what a tragedy it was that poor Nick had suffered such a devastating mental breakdown. I had heard enough. The next morning, while Marta was at work, I called Detective Ray Martinez, a friend of Jason's who worked financial crimes. I explained the situation and provided copies of all my evidence: the video footage, the timeline, the documentation of their scheme. "This is good stuff," he said after reviewing everything. "Conspiracy to commit fraud, possibly elder abuse, definitely domestic manipulation. But building a criminal case will take time, and they might escalate their timeline if they get suspicious. What do you recommend? Let them make their move. File the petition, go to the hearing, let them present their case. Then we'll present ours. With this evidence, any judge will see right through their scheme. And in the meantime, you keep playing your part. Act confused, act paranoid, give them exactly what they expect to see. The more confident they get, the more mistakes they'll make." It was risky. Letting them file a competency petition meant there was a chance, however small, that their plan might actually work. But Detective Martinez was right about one thing. The more confident they got, the more likely they were to slip up, and I was counting on them getting very confident indeed. The competency petition arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Marta was at work, so I signed for it alone, reading through the legal documents with the kind of cold fascination you might feel while examining your own autopsy report. According to the petition, I was suffering from severe cognitive decline following my car accident. I was confused, paranoid, unable to manage my finances or make rational decisions about my care. My loving wife was requesting that the court appoint her as my guardian and conservator, giving her legal authority over my medical treatment and financial affairs. The supporting documentation was impressive. Statements from Marta describing my erratic behavior, a letter from Dr. Morrison noting his concerns about possible neurological damage, even a report from our insurance company about my increasingly frequent calls asking about coverage details I should have remembered. It was all lies, of course, but they were well-crafted lies backed by carefully manufactured evidence. If I hadn't known what they were doing, I might have believed it myself. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. 5 days to prepare my defense, to gather my evidence, to plan my counterattack. 5 days to turn their own strategy against them. I called Rebecca Chen and Detective Martinez, arranging a meeting for that afternoon. When Marta came home from work, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the petition spread out in front of me, looking appropriately confused and distressed. "What's this?" I asked, holding up the papers like they were written in a foreign language. Her performance was flawless. Shock, concern, carefully controlled tears. "Oh, Nick, I was hoping we could discuss this together before you saw the paperwork." "Discuss what? This says you want to have me declared incompetent." "Not incompetent, honey. Just in need of help. You've been struggling so much since the accident, and I'm worried about you. We're all worried about you." "All? Who's all?" "Your doctor, your sister, even some of your coworkers have mentioned that you seem different lately. More confused, more anxious. I think you need professional help, and sometimes the only way to get that help is through the legal system." I let her see the hurt in my eyes, the betrayal and confusion she was expecting. "You want to take away my rights? I want to protect you, from yourself if necessary." That night, Greg came over earlier than usual. They must have been excited about the petition being served, eager to discuss their next moves. I listened from my office as they celebrated their progress. "How did he react?" Greg asked. "Exactly as expected. Confused, hurt, a little angry, but not really understanding what's happening. I think the medication adjustments are working better than we hoped." "And you're sure he won't try to fight this?" "With what?" "He can barely remember to take his pills without reminding. No lawyer is going to take a case from someone who's clearly having mental health issues." But I had taken my case to a lawyer, and Detective Martinez, and Jason, who had been documenting everything from his end at the hospital. They thought I was isolated, confused, without resources or allies. They were wrong on all counts. The next morning, I drove to Rebecca Chen's office for our strategy session. Detective Martinez was already there, along with a woman I didn't recognize. A forensic accountant named Dr. Sarah Kim, who specialized in financial elder abuse cases. "We've been busy," Rebecca said, spreading documents across her conference table. "Greg Stein has an interesting history. 3 previous relationships with older women, all of whom experienced sudden financial difficulties that required his help to resolve." "Are you saying he's done this before?" "We're saying he has a pattern," Detective Martinez replied. "And patterns are very useful in court." Dr. Kim opened her laptop and showed me a series of financial charts and graphs. "We've been analyzing your joint accounts with your wife. Over the past 6 months, there have been numerous small transfers to accounts controlled by Mr. Stein's business entities. Nothing large enough to trigger fraud alerts, but collectively they represent a significant amount of money." "How much?" "Approximately $47,000. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. $47,000. Nearly a year's worth of mortgage payments, transferred to my wife's lover while I was working 60-hour weeks and worrying about our retirement savings." "The good news," Rebecca continued, "is that this gives us multiple angles of attack. The medication tampering is attempted poisoning. The financial transfers could be fraud or embezzlement. The competency petition itself is based on false information, which makes it perjury. We have enough evidence to destroy them both." "But here's what I recommend," Detective Martinez added. "Let them go to the hearing. Let them present their case. Put their lies on the record under oath. Then we'll present our evidence and watch their whole scheme collapse in real time. What if the judge believes them? With what we have? Not a chance. But even if something goes wrong, we can appeal. And by then, we'll have them on record committing perjury, which is a felony. The plan was risky but elegant. Instead of trying to stop the hearing, we would use it as a trap. Let Marta and Greg present their carefully constructed lies, then systematically demolish every claim with video evidence, financial records, and expert testimony. I spent the weekend preparing, reviewing my evidence and practicing my testimony. Marta was solicitous and concerned, bringing me meals and asking about my state of mind with the kind of fake sympathy that made my skin crawl. "Are you nervous about Monday?" she asked on Sunday night. "Should I be?" "It's just a hearing, honey. The judge wants to make sure you're getting the care you need. There's nothing to be afraid of. Nothing to be afraid of." Right. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, the kind of November day that makes you want to stay in bed and pretend the world doesn't exist. I dressed carefully, not too formal, not too casual, aiming for the appearance of someone who was trying to look competent but struggling with the details. The courthouse was downtown, an imposing building with marble columns and the kind of architectural gravitas designed to make ordinary citizens feel small and intimidated. Marta met me in the lobby with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Patterson who looked like he charged by the hour and enjoyed every minute of it. "Mr. Brandt," Patterson said, shaking my hand with practiced sympathy, "I want you to know that we're all here because we care about you. This isn't adversarial. We just want to make sure you get the help you need." I nodded and mumbled something appropriately confused. Meanwhile, Rebecca Chen appeared at my elbow with a briefcase full of evidence and a smile that could cut glass. "Ready?" she asked quietly. "Let's do this." The hearing was held in a small courtroom with wood paneling and fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly jaundiced. Judge Patricia Hernandez presided, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the kind of no-nonsense expression that suggested she'd heard every lie in the book at least twice. Patterson presented their case first, calling Marta to testify about my declining mental state. She was perfect, concerned but not hysterical, specific but not vindictive. She described my confusion, my memory problems, my increasing paranoia and irritability. "Has your husband ever expressed concerns about his medication?" Patterson asked. "Constantly," Marta replied. "He thinks someone is tampering with his pills, that the pharmacy is giving him the wrong prescriptions. Last week he accused me of hiding his hospital bracelet, which doesn't even make sense." "And how has this affected your daily life?" "It's been very difficult. He can't manage our finances anymore. He forgets to pay bills, makes the same purchases multiple times, asks me the same questions over and over. I'm worried that he might hurt himself or someone else if he doesn't get professional help." Then they called Dr. Morrison, who testified about my head injury and the possibility of cognitive decline. He was honest and professional, describing his genuine concerns about my mental state based on the symptoms Marta had reported. Finally, they called Greg Stein. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Greg took the stand with the confident swagger of someone who believed his own lies, describing himself as a family friend who had been helping Marta cope with my deteriorating condition. "In your opinion," Patterson asked, "is Mr. Brandt capable of managing his own affairs?" "Absolutely not," Greg replied. "He's clearly suffering from some kind of neurological damage. The confusion, the paranoia, the inability to remember basic information. It's textbook cognitive decline." "And you believe Mrs. Brandt would be a suitable guardian?" "Without question. She's devoted to her husband, patient with his condition, and financially responsible. She's exactly the kind of person the court should trust with this responsibility." When Patterson finished his questioning, Judge Hernandez turned to Rebecca. "Does the respondent wish to present a defense?" "We do, Your Honor. And I think the court will find our evidence quite illuminating." Rebecca's first witness was Detective Martinez, who testified about the financial irregularities in our accounts. The transfers to Greg's business, the timing of the transactions, the pattern of behavior that suggested systematic fraud. Then she called Dr. Kim, who presented her forensic analysis of our finances. Charts, graphs, timelines, all showing how Marta and Greg had been systematically draining our accounts while planning to gain legal control over everything else. But the real bombshell came when Rebecca called me to testify. Mr. Brandt, she began, have you been experiencing the cognitive difficulties described by your wife? No, I have not. Have you been taking the medications prescribed by Dr. Morrison? Not the ones my wife had access to. I've been taking fresh prescriptions stored securely because I discovered that someone was tampering with my original medications. The courtroom went dead silent. Marta's face went white. Greg looked like he was about to be sick. Can you explain what you mean by tampering? I can do better than that. I can show you. Rebecca activated the courtroom's video system and began playing the footage from my bedroom camera. The judge, the lawyers, everyone in the courtroom watched as Greg and Marta entered my bedroom, went through my medications, and systematically replaced my pills with doctored versions. The audio was crystal clear. Their discussion of the commitment hearing, their plan to gain control of my assets, their casual dismissal of my rights and autonomy. When the video ended, the courtroom was so quiet you could hear the ventilation system humming. Judge Hernandez looked at Marta and Greg like they were something she'd scraped off her shoe. Mrs. Brandt, she said slowly, do you have anything to say about this evidence? Marta opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No sound came out. Mr. Stein, would you like to explain your actions? Greg was sweating now, his confident demeanor completely gone. Your Honor, This is taken out of context. What context would make medication tampering and financial fraud acceptable, Mr. Stein? He had no answer. Neither did Marta. They sat there like deer in headlights while their entire scheme crumbled around them. Judge Hernandez dismissed the competency petition and ordered an immediate investigation into their actions. Detective Martinez arrested them both as they left the courtroom. Marta for fraud and conspiracy, Greg for the same charges plus medication tampering and elder abuse. I walked out of that courthouse a free man, my rights intact, my finances secure, and my enemies destroyed by their own greed and stupidity. But I wasn't done with them yet. Here's a tighter version. The criminal case dragged 8 months, turning my quiet life into a tabloid story. Texts and bank records proved Marta and Greg were equal partners. They met at a wellness seminar, started an affair, and used my post-accident confusion as cover, until their greed and medication tampering exposed them. Both pled guilty. She got 3 years and restitution. He got 5, extra charges, lost licenses, and most assets. I kept the house, retirement, and a settlement. The divorce finalized with her claims denied. The viral security footage made me briefly famous, but the real victory was seeing their plan collapse while I stayed 3 steps ahead. I sold the old house, the fog lifted, and I started over. I reconnected with Linda, the nurse who'd first questioned my missing bracelet, dated, healed, and married her the next spring. The cameras came down. Life got simple again. The bracelet's mystery never mattered. It was just the loose thread that unraveled everything. 3 years later, Marta mailed a 5-page apology. I shredded it. Some betrayals don't get rewrites. They tried to hide the truth and steal my future. Instead, they revealed themselves and handed me the evidence. Their story ended on my cameras. Mine began there, and it has a happy ending. The end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.